My parents made me quit college to care for my grandma, then tried to exclude me from the inheritance I earned. So I took my share legally. I'm a 25-year-old guy, and I've always been the one who sacrificed the most for my family. It wasn't because anyone asked me to. It was because I thought that's what good sons were supposed to do. My parents raised me to believe that obedience was love, that saying no meant betrayal. So when my grandmother's health started to decline, and they told me she needed full-time care, I didn't hesitate. I was in my second year of college, halfway through my degree, finally feeling like I was building a future for myself. But when Mom said she might not have much time left, just take one semester off, my heart overruled my logic. I still remember the night I made the decision. My dorm light was dim, my textbook spread out, and my phone buzzed with my mom's messages, each one more guilt-laced than the last. You're the only one she trusts. We can't afford a nurse. Family comes first, right? Those words burrowed deep. I told myself it was temporary, that I'd go home, take care of Grandma, and return after a few months. When? I came home. She was sitting in her recliner by the window, wrapped in a faded pink blanket. She looked fragile, her hands trembling slightly, but her eyes lit up when she saw me. "You always were my boy," she whispered, squeezing my hand. That moment made it feel worth it. I didn't see the trap closing. I only saw love. Dad patted my back and said, "You did the right thing, son." My mom smiled like she'd just solved everything. I unpacked my bags in my old room, not realizing it was the first step into a life that wouldn't feel like mine anymore. I thought I was coming home for a semester, but that semester never really ended. At first, I kept my old routine alive in small ways. I'd wake up early, make Grandma breakfast, then open my laptop to review old lecture notes, convincing myself I was staying sharp. But weeks blurred into months, and school started, feeling like a distant world I'd accidentally wandered away from. Every time I mentioned going back, Mom's voice would soften, almost pleading. "Just until winter, honey. She's not getting better." Then winter became spring, and spring became another fall. Grandma needed more help. Medication schedules, doctor appointments, late-night care when she couldn't breathe right. I handled it all while my parents worked normal hours and my siblings went on with their lives. I told myself it was fine, that this was temporary, but deep down, resentment started growing in quiet corners of my heart. I'd see pictures of my old classmates graduating, laughing in caps and gowns, and I'd feel this ache, like time was sprinting past me while I stood still. Dad often said, "You're doing something noble. You'll thank yourself later." But his praise felt empty. It didn't pay my tuition, and it didn't bring back the years I was losing. I remember one night vividly. I came downstairs after cleaning up Grandma's medicine tray, and I overheard my parents talking. Mom sighed. "At least he's useful around here." Dad chuckled. "Yeah, it's like having free help." That line hit harder than I wanted to admit. I froze at the bottom of the stairs, realizing for the first time that maybe this wasn't about love. It was about convenience. The next morning, I told myself I'd bring it up. But when I saw Grandma smile at me from her chair, I swallowed my anger. Because how do you say no to the only person in the house who truly looked happy to see you? 2 years slipped away before I realized what had really happened. I was still living in my old room, the posters on the wall faded, my textbooks gathering dust in a box I never reopened. Every morning started the same, checking Grandma's vitals, making her oatmeal, reminding her to take her meds, then cleaning up before my parents got home from work. They called it teamwork, but the team was just me. I kept asking, quietly at first, "When can I go back to college?" Mom would sigh, "You can't just abandon her now." Dad would add, "School will still be there," but she won't. That line worked every single time. It made me feel like a monster for wanting my own life. I'd retreat to my room, guilt settling like dust in my lungs. Friends stopped inviting me out after a while. "You're always busy," they'd say, and they weren't wrong. My world had shrunk to one house, one hallway, one endless cycle of care. I didn't notice the resentment building, how I flinched every time my parents thanked me with that fake warmth, or how my siblings stopped checking in altogether. They'd drop by for birthdays, take selfies with Grandma, post them online, and leave before the dishes were even cleared. Sometimes, late at night, I'd sit by Grandma's bed, listening to the rhythmic beep of her oxygen machine, and wonder if I'd wasted my 20s. She'd smile at me, eyes soft, and whisper, "You're a good boy." Those words broke me and healed me at the same time. I clung to them like they meant something, but deep down, I knew the truth. I wasn't living a life anymore. I was just maintaining one. Despite everything, the only thing that kept me from completely falling apart was Grandma herself. She was the one person in the house who seemed to notice how tired I was, how drained I looked after another sleepless night. Sometimes, while I helped her brush her hair or made her tea, she'd say softly, "You shouldn't be the one doing this, sweetheart. You've got your whole life ahead of you." And every time I'd smile and lie, "It's okay, Grandma. I want to be here." But the truth was, I didn't want to be anywhere else, because she made it bearable. We'd spend quiet afternoons by the window, sunlight spilling through lace curtains as she told me stories about her childhood, about the war, her first job, her late husband. She was sharper than people gave her credit for, still funny, still curious. She'd ask about my dreams, my friends, my classes, and even though I had none of those things left, I'd tell her stories like I was still part of that world. Sometimes, she'd take my hand and whisper, "When I'm gone, I'll make sure you're taken care of. You've given me more love than anyone." I'd laugh it off, not realizing how serious she was. There was something comforting in her faith, like she believed my sacrifices still meant something in a house where no one else did. I started living for those small moments, her laughter when I showed her funny videos, her tears when I played old music that reminded her of Grandpa. In those moments, it didn't matter that my life had paused. I felt needed. I felt loved. But love can't stop time, and deep down, I knew it couldn't stop what was coming next, because soon her body started giving up faster than I could keep up. It happened slowly at first, missed meals, weaker steps, her voice thinning until even her good mornings sounded like whispers. Every doctor visit ended with the same rehearsed line, "She's comfortable, but she's fading." I tried to pretend those words didn't mean anything, but inside I was unraveling. Nights became longer. I'd wake up to the sound of her coughing, rush into her room, and hold her hand until she drifted back to sleep. My parents never woke up. They'd ask in the morning, "Did she have another episode?" As if they hadn't heard the same gasping I did. One night I found myself sitting by her bed at 3 a.m., staring at the heart monitor light blinking weakly. "I don't think I can do this much longer," I whispered to the dark. She opened her eyes just enough to say, "You already have, my boy. You've done more than anyone." Tears blurred my vision. I wanted to believe that meant something, that my sacrifice wasn't for nothing. The end came quietly, like the world just exhaled. I remember the stillness more than anything. I was the one holding her hand when she stopped breathing. The room didn't feel sacred. It felt hollow. When I told my parents, my mom just sighed. At least she didn't suffer. Dad muttered, "We'll need to start arranging things." No one cried. No one even said, "Thank you." For days, I moved like a ghost, cleaning her room, sorting her clothes, trying to fill the silence. But the emptiness wasn't just grief. It was realization. I had built my entire world around someone who was gone, and now there was nothing left for me. At her funeral, everyone praised my parents for their dedication. Not one person mentioned me. That was the first time I realized love in my family only existed when it was convenient. A few weeks after the funeral, when the flowers had wilted and the condolences stopped coming, my parents called for a family meeting. I remember sitting at the dining table, the same one where Grandma used to have her tea, while my mom shuffled papers nervously. "It's about the estate," she said, her tone suddenly businesslike. Dad added, "Your grandmother's lawyer will read the will next week. We'll all attend." I didn't think much of it. Honestly, I didn't even care about money or property. I just wanted closure. Still, a small part of me felt comfort knowing Grandma had once promised, "I'll make sure you're taken care of." Maybe she meant it in a spiritual way, but a naive hope flickered inside me. The day of the reading, the lawyer's office smelled faintly of coffee and old paper. My parents sat on one side, my older sister and brother beside them, and I sat alone at the end of the table. The lawyer adjusted his glasses and began to read. The house went to my parents. The savings, split evenly between my siblings, jewelry, bonds, even personal keepsakes, all distributed. My name wasn't mentioned, not once. I froze. I thought maybe he'd made a mistake, that my portion was coming later. But when he folded the paper and said, "That concludes the reading," I felt my stomach drop. My mother avoided my eyes. My father cleared his throat and said, "It's what she wanted. She probably assumed you'd rebuild your life on your own." I couldn't even form words. I had given up my education, my freedom, my 20s, for them, for her, and now I wasn't just left out. I was erased. As we left the office, I turned back to the lawyer. He gave me a strange look, sympathetic, almost apologetic, and in that brief moment, I knew something wasn't right. Something had been changed. A few days after the will reading, I was still in a daze, wandering the house like a stranger in my own life. My parents acted as if nothing had happened. My siblings were suddenly extra cheerful, making plans about renovations and future investments. I tried to convince myself Grandma just forgot, that maybe she hadn't meant her promise literally, but the ache wouldn't go away. It felt wrong, too deliberate. Then one afternoon, a woman knocked on our door. Mrs. Henderson, Grandma's old friend from church. She hugged me tightly, her perfume faint and familiar. "You were her angel," she said softly. "She couldn't stop talking about you." I smiled weakly, but when I told her about the will, she looked confused. "That can't be right," she said, shaking her head. "Your grandmother told me she updated everything months before she passed. She was so proud, said she made sure you'd be taken care of." My heart skipped. "She said that?" Mrs. Henderson nodded. "She even joked that your parents would finally have to respect you once they saw what she left." I felt the blood drain from my face. My parents must have heard her because Mom's voice suddenly cut in from behind me. "That's enough reminiscing for today." Her smile was stiff, forced. She guided Mrs. Henderson to the door with polite but tight gestures. I stood there, stunned as the door shut and the silence returned. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying Mrs. Henderson's words. Updated everything. Proud of me. Taken care of. None of that matched what the lawyer had read. Something wasn't just off, it was manipulated. As I stared at Grandma's old photo on my nightstand, I felt the first real spark of anger. For the first time in years, I wasn't the obedient son anymore. I was the one who needed answers. I started small, searching through drawers, envelopes, anything that might hold a clue. My parents had boxed up most of Grandma's belongings, but something in me knew the answers were there. Late one night, while they slept, I slipped into the study where Dad kept the family files. The old desk creaked under my hands as I went through piles of receipts, medical records, and insurance forms. And then, tucked inside a folder labeled Estate Planning, I found it. A PDF on a dusty flash drive titled Updated Will, Final Copy. My heart pounded as I opened it. It was dated 6 months before Grandma passed. And right there, in clean black ink, was my name. Half of her estate, specifically for the care, devotion, and sacrifices made by my grandson. My hands trembled. She hadn't forgotten me. She'd remembered everything. But as I scrolled, I realized this wasn't the version the lawyer read. This one was newer, signed, witnessed, and legally valid. The next morning, I confronted my parents, holding the printed pages like a weapon. "What's this?" I asked, voice shaking. Mom's face went pale, then hardened. Dad's jaw clenched. "You had no right going through our things," he snapped. I ignored him. Why wasn't this version used? Mom folded her arms. That's not official. She changed her mind before signing it. She did sign it, I said, pointing to the bottom. Her signature, bold, clear, real, stared back at us all. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Dad muttered, "You think you deserve it after everything we did for her." That was when I realized they hadn't just used me. They'd stolen from me. And for the first time, I wasn't going to let them get away with it. I left the house that night shaking. It wasn't anger at first, it was disbelief. The people I had trusted most, the ones who taught me that family always comes first, had forged my grandmother's last wish. I sat in my car outside for almost an hour staring at the printed will in my lap. The paper felt heavier than it should have, like it carried every wasted year, every broken promise, every sleepless night I'd spent by her side. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to burn it, to pretend I hadn't seen anything. Another part, the tired, bitter part, wanted justice. But I didn't even know where to begin. When I called a family friend for advice, he sighed and said, "You'll need proof and a good lawyer. They'll fight you tooth and nail." I didn't have money. I didn't even have a degree anymore. I'd given up everything for them. The next few days were a blur. My parents acted like nothing happened, like my discovery was just a tantrum. Mom even made my favorite dinner one night saying, "Let's not ruin what's left of this family." I stared at her across the table and felt something snap inside me. The old version of me, the one who stayed quiet to keep the peace, died that night. I went to my room, locked the door, and cried until I couldn't breathe. I wasn't mourning Grandma anymore. I was mourning myself, the years I'd lost, the person I used to be. But when the tears stopped, something colder took their place. I looked at that signed will again and whispered, "You tried to erase me." And right then I decided, if they wanted to play dirty, I'd show them what fairness really looked like. The next morning, I walked into a small law office downtown clutching the printed will like it was my last lifeline. The lawyer, a middle-aged man named Patel, listened quietly as I explained everything. How I'd cared for my grandmother, the sudden disappearance of my name from the inheritance, and the alternate will I'd found. He flipped through the pages carefully, his brow furrowing. "This is valid," he finally said. "Signed, dated, witnessed, and notarized. If another version was presented to the court, someone tampered with the estate." Hearing those words made my stomach twist. Tampered. Fraud. My own parents. Mr. Patel leaned back in his chair. "If you're ready, we can contest it. But understand, this will tear your family apart." I took a deep breath. They already did that. Within a week, legal papers were filed. My parents were officially notified, and the fallout was immediate. My phone blew up with messages. My mother left voicemails alternating between guilt trips and rage. "How could you do this to us? You're ruining your grandmother's memory." My siblings texted me, "You're being greedy. You always wanted attention." I didn't respond to any of them. When word spread among extended family, most took my parents' side. They said I was money-hungry and disrespectful. But then Mr. Patel called one evening with something that changed everything. "We subpoenaed her lawyer's email records," he said. "He confirms your grandmother sent him the updated version and gave verbal confirmation that it should replace the old one." I sat there, phone pressed to my ear, heart pounding. Proof. Undeniable proof. My parents hadn't just lied, they'd stolen her final wish. For the first time in years, I didn't feel powerless. I felt focused, determined. They'd taken my past. Now, I was coming for my justice. The day of the hearing felt unreal. The courtroom smelled faintly of coffee and old paper, and the quiet hum of whispers echoed through the space. My parents sat across from me, perfectly dressed, pretending to be composed, but I could see it in their faces. Fear disguised as confidence. My mother wouldn't look at me. My father whispered something to their attorney, jaw tight, eyes sharp. For once, I wasn't intimidated. I had the truth on my side. When my lawyer presented the evidence, the room fell silent. The updated will. The notarized signatures. The email exchanges between Grandma's attorney and the estate office confirming her instructions. The judge's tone shifted from neutral to serious. "This version appears legitimate," he said. My father tried to interject, claiming Grandma was confused near the end, but the lawyer countered smoothly, producing a video clip of her last legal meeting. Clear-minded, articulate, smiling as she said my name, my mother's composure cracked. "He manipulated her," she shouted, voice trembling, but even she didn't sound convinced. The judge raised a hand. "That's enough." The ruling came swiftly. The court reinstated the valid will, restoring my inheritance and formally admonishing my parents for concealing documents. They weren't criminally charged, but their reputation in the community was shredded. The same relatives who once called me greedy now whispered behind their backs. Walking out of that courthouse, I felt both victorious and hollow. Justice didn't feel like triumph. It felt like mourning. I had proven the truth, but the cost was final. Whatever was left of our family bond had died in that courtroom. That night, my mother called one last time. "You've ruined us," she said quietly. I took a deep breath. "No, Mom, you did that the day you chose greed over love." And I hung up. For good. Months passed after the ruling, and life slowly began to feel like mine again. I used part of my inheritance to re-enroll in college, the same program I had abandoned years ago. Walking across campus that first day felt surreal, like I'd stepped into a time machine that had finally let me out. I wasn't the same kid who left before. The world felt heavier, but I felt stronger. Every lecture, every late-night study session, every moment of exhaustion, it all meant something now because I'd earned it back. I rented a small apartment near campus. It wasn't much, cracked walls, noisy neighbors, but it was mine. No more guilt, no more walking on eggshells. Sometimes I'd sit by the window at night and think about Grandma. I could almost hear her voice, soft and reassuring. "You've done enough, sweetheart. Now go live." That thought always brought tears, not of sadness but peace. My parents never reached out again, and I didn't either. My siblings sent one awkward text months later. "We didn't know everything." I replied, "Now you do." And that was the end of it. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. On graduation day, I carried a small photo of Grandma in my pocket. As my name was called and the crowd applauded, I looked up at the sky and whispered, "We did it." I don't think she wanted me to fight for money. I think she wanted me to fight for myself. So when people ask if I regret taking legal action against my own parents, I always say the same thing. They made me quit school to care for her. I only took back what she wanted me to have. They stole my years, but I took my future back.